In the suffocating silence of the night, Anna's heart raced faster than she could breathe. The chill of the air cut through her like 1,000 knives, and yet she was frozen in place, rooted to the spot. The sound of footsteps echoed closer, and the hairs on the back of her neck prickled. She hadn't seen him, not yet, but she knew. He was there. He was always there. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the pavement, distorting reality into something sinister. Panic was creeping in, faster than the cold, and she wanted to run. She should run, but her body wouldn't obey. Why did he always find her? Why was he always one step ahead, like some kind of ghost? The silence between them felt oppressive, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Anna could feel the heat of his gaze on her, though she had not turned to see him. The weight of his presence was undeniable, and it was suffocating. Something was terribly wrong. Something was about to happen. The sound of footsteps grew louder, echoing in the silence that had swallowed the night. Anna's breath quickened, her pulse pounding in her ears. She could feel the weight of the stranger's gaze, pressing on her from behind, though she dared not look back. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to move, as if rooted by an invisible force. She was trapped in a web of terror, her mind racing for a way out, yet every thought felt distant, disjointed. She had been followed before, but this felt different, more deliberate, more invasive. The rhythm of his steps was too synchronized with hers, each footstep seemingly timed to her own. Anna tried to force herself to calm down, to think logically, but all she could feel was the impending dread. The fog thickened, and the streetlights flickered once more, casting long haunting shadows on the wet pavement. She took another cautious step forward, but the moment she did, the footsteps halted. Her breath hitched, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. It was too quiet now, too still. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and cold metal, the fog now enveloping Anna, as if it were a living thing, breathing with her every movement. Her mind raced, spinning with questions she couldn't answer. Who was he, and why couldn't she escape him? She thought she had lost him once before, but this time it felt like he had been waiting for her. As she reached the next intersection, her heart hammered in her chest. He had stopped following. For now, at least. But she didn't dare feel relief. She couldn't risk turning back. She couldn't risk acknowledging the fear that gripped her so tight. She swallowed hard, steadying her breath. The light from the street lamp above flickered erratically, casting fleeting shadows that seemed to shift with her every step. For a brief moment, the city seemed peaceful, but it was a fragile illusion. The silence now felt suffocating, more dangerous than the noise of the pursuit. Anna pulled her coat tighter around her, the cold seeping deeper into her bones. But no matter how tightly she wrapped herself, she couldn't escape the growing dread that gnawed at her insides. Her heart skipped a beat as the streetlights flickered once more, and then, a sound. A soft rustle behind her. Anna's blood ran cold. She knew it wasn't the wind. She stopped dead in her tracks, every muscle in her body locking up. She didn't dare turn around. The footsteps were closer again, though this time they were softer, more deliberate. They were walking in time with hers, an unsettling synchronicity that made her skin crawl. She could hear the faint scrape of shoes against the wet asphalt, too faint to be imagined, too distinct to ignore. Anna clenched her fists at her sides, her nails digging into her palms. She wasn't sure what terrified her more, the fact that she was being followed or the fact that she couldn't see her stalker. In the fog, everything was blurred, like a nightmare that stretched the distance between dream and reality. Her only choice was to keep walking, though every step felt like a betrayal. The footsteps never stopped. They were there. Always there. A chill ran down her spine as she felt them draw even closer, like a shadow creeping closer to the light. It happened in an instant, too fast for her to react, but just slow enough for her to realize she was no longer alone. His voice, soft and chilling, broke through the silence. "I've been waiting for you, Anna." The words sent a shockwave through her, and she felt her breath catch in her throat. The familiarity in his tone made her stomach turn. How did he know her name? Her mind scrambled for answers, but there were none to be found. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body refused to obey. He was too close now, so close she could almost feel his breath on her neck. The fog seemed to press in from all sides, closing the space between them, trapping her with him. She could hear his footsteps again, this time behind her. They were softer now, almost a whisper, but they still echoed in her mind, relentless and cold. "You don't remember me, do you?" The voice was so calm, so deliberate, as if he were enjoying her terror. Anna's world tilted, spinning in chaos. There was nowhere to go. No one to help her. Anna hadn't slept in days. The weight of the unknown pressed down on her, every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside, making her jump. She hadn't told anyone about the man who followed her. It was too insane, too unbelievable. Who would believe her? The first time she thought she was being followed, she brushed it off as paranoia. But now, every day was a countdown, a game of survival. She couldn't focus. She couldn't think straight. The man's voice, soft and haunting, echoed in her mind. "I've been waiting for you." The words circled her thoughts like a predator, and every time they returned, they became more unsettling. His presence was so real, so consuming. He was always there, always watching, never saying a word, just observing. She hadn't seen his face, not once, but somehow she knew it, felt it in her bones. The streetlights, the fog, the shadows, every corner felt like a trap now. Every step was weighted with fear. Anna needed answers, but she wasn't sure she wanted to know the truth. Every sound in her apartment now sent a shock of panic through her. The ticking of the clock felt louder, the hum of the refrigerator more intrusive. She checked the locks on her door again, but she knew it wouldn't help. No lock could keep him out. Every corner of her apartment felt like a potential hiding place for him. The anxiety gnawed at her, turning every mundane task into a battle against her own mind. She couldn't concentrate. The constant fear had taken over her life. Her reflection in the window, distorted by the fog outside, was the only thing she could focus on. It was hard to believe she had once been a person who could leave the house without constantly checking behind her. Anna had once had dreams, ambitions. But now she was a shell of who she used to be, consumed by a fear she couldn't escape. His presence was everywhere, even in the things she used to find comfort in. She needed help, but she didn't know where to turn. Her phone buzzed again, breaking the silence of the room. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she reached for it, almost afraid to look. The messages were the same, nothing specific, just cryptic phrases. "I'm always watching. You can't hide forever." There were no names, no clues, just those words. She had blocked every number that seemed suspicious, but they kept coming. One message in particular stood out. "Meet me where it all started." Where did that even mean? She couldn't place it. Was it a place she'd been before? A memory? It felt like a puzzle she was meant to solve, but every time she tried to piece it together, it only fractured further. The messages were driving her mad. She knew she should go to the police, but who would believe her? How could she explain something so surreal? The terror that gripped her seemed to paralyze her ability to think clearly. Every message was like a hook digging deeper into her psyche, pulling her closer to the edge. Anna couldn't ignore the message any longer. She had to go. She didn't know where it all started meant, but she had to find out. The thought of facing whatever was waiting for her filled her with dread, but she couldn't keep running. She had to take control, to confront the fear that had been hunting her. The night outside seemed colder than ever, the air thick with fog, just like it had been that night when everything changed. She grabbed her coat, pulling it tight around her body as if it could shield her from whatever was coming. The world outside was unfamiliar now, distorted by the fear that had gripped her every waking moment. The streetlights flickered in the distance, casting shadows that seemed to move with her. Every step felt like it could be her last. Anna didn't know who she was running from anymore, or even if she was running at all. All she knew was that she couldn't stay. She couldn't let fear control her any longer. The streets were deserted, the fog so thick it seemed to consume everything. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. Every step Anna took seemed to echo in the emptiness. She walked slowly, hesitating at every corner, as if waiting for something, or someone, to reveal itself. The weight of the unknown pressed down on her like a physical force. She could almost hear him again, his soft, chilling voice whispering in the back of her mind. "I've been waiting for you." The fog parted slightly as she turned a corner, and in that brief moment of clarity, she saw it, the place. It was an abandoned building, old and crumbling, like something out of a nightmare. The windows were shattered, and the door hung loosely from its hinges. This was it. This was where it had all started. But what was waiting for her inside? Anna stepped cautiously into the abandoned building, the door creaking ominously behind her. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of mildew and decay. She could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in, each step a reminder that she was far from safe. Her heart hammered in her chest as her eyes adjusted to the dimness. The building was in ruins, with crumbling walls and shattered windows that allowed only the faintest slivers of light to filter through the dust. The echoes of her footsteps felt like they were calling out into the abyss, answering her own fears. She kept moving forward, each room she entered more desolate than the last. The walls seemed to close in on her, their jagged edges and crumbling plaster like the teeth of some ancient beast. Her mind raced, trying to remember why she was here, trying to recall the events that led her to this moment. But the fog in her mind grew thicker with each passing second. The man was still out there. She could feel his presence, like a shadow just beyond her reach. As Anna moved deeper into the building, she stumbled over debris, her heart racing with each noise she made. The silence felt too heavy, too suffocating. She should have left when she had the chance, but now it was too late. The feeling of being watched had never been stronger, like a pair of unseen eyes following her every move. She couldn't shake the sensation that someone, or something, was in the building with her. She paused, holding her breath, listening for any sound that would confirm her fears. A creak. A scrape. Something shifting in the distance. It was just a shadow in the corner of her eye, but she knew it wasn't her imagination. The dread that had clung to her for days now bloomed into full-blown terror. She turned quickly, but there was nothing. The building was empty, save for the weight of its history, and the shadows that seemed to dance just out of sight. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking, waiting for her to make a mistake. Anna's pace quickened as she moved through the hallway, her footsteps echoing louder now, betraying her attempts to stay silent. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a broken door. Inside, the room was even darker, and the air was thick with dust. She took a step inside, her foot catching on a piece of debris. As she stumbled, she caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye, a flash of movement, quick and almost imperceptible. Her breath caught in her throat as her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't alone. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, and a chill ran down her spine. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling in the stillness. No response. Just the silence of the crumbling building, the same silence that had haunted her for days. She took another step, the sound of her breath now, the only thing filling the void. But then, she heard it again. A scrape. A footstep. Her blood ran cold. Anna's pulse raced as she stepped into the room, each movement slow and deliberate, as though she were afraid of disturbing the silence. The scrape came again, louder this time, followed by a soft whisper, almost inaudible, but unmistakably real. "I know you're here." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She spun around, her heart in her throat, but there was nothing. The room was still. Her breathing was shallow, and every sound seemed amplified in the eerie silence. She felt like she was losing her grip on reality, the line between fear and madness blurring with each passing second. The whisper had come from behind her, yet no one was there. Her body was on high alert, every muscle tense, every nerve firing. She didn't know whether to run or to confront whatever was waiting for her. The building seemed to close in on her, the walls pressing against her chest. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She had to get out. Anna could feel her mind fracturing. The silence, the shadows, the whispers, they were all consuming her, suffocating her. She backed away from the center of the room, her eyes wide and wild, scanning for any sign of movement. A door. She saw a door at the far end of the room, barely visible in the dim light. She ran toward it, her feet pounding the floor as if she could outrun the fear that had taken hold of her. But as her hand reached for the handle, she stopped. The door was already open. A figure stood in the doorway. He was tall, with dark clothing that blended into the shadows. His face was hidden in the darkness, but she knew who it was. The man. He had finally found her. "You can't escape me," he said, his voice low and cold. Anna's blood ran cold. She had nowhere to run. Anna's breath caught as the man stepped fully into the light. The shadows peeled away from his face, revealing features she knew, but couldn't place. His eyes held hers with an intensity that froze her in place. "You've been here before," he said, his voice calm yet charged. Her mind raced. She shook her head, whispering, "I don't know you." But deep down, a flicker of recognition stirred. Memories she didn't want to face began clawing their way to the surface, fragments of another night, another version of herself. The man's expression shifted, not malicious but something else, pain. "I tried to protect you," he murmured, stepping closer. She backed into the crumbling wall, the cold biting through her coat. The realization hit her like ice. He wasn't just following her. He knew her. He knew what she had done. And the truth was something she had buried so deeply. She had convinced herself it never happened. Her voice trembled. "Why are you doing this to me?" The man's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists before loosening again. "I'm not here to hurt you, Anna. I'm here because you forgot." She stared at him, confusion mixing with fear. "Forgot what?" Corners of his mouth twitched, not a smile but a grimace. "The fire, the night your life ended." The words cut through her like glass, pulling a half-buried memory to the surface. Flames licking the walls, smoke choking her lungs. Someone's voice screaming her name. She had run. She had left someone behind. "No," she whispered, shaking her head violently. But the man's eyes told her otherwise. His gaze held the weight of someone who had carried the truth alone for far too long. Anna's knees felt weak, the memory clawing at her mind. "You were there," she whispered. The man nodded slowly. "I pulled you out." His voice cracked, betraying emotion. "But I couldn't save her." Her stomach dropped. Images flashed. Smoke, heat, a hand reaching for hers slipping away. "Who?" Her question trembled on her lips. The man stepped forward, his expression breaking. "Your sister." The word hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back, gripping the wall for support. "I don't have a sister," she said, but the denial sounded hollow. The walls of the building seemed to close in, the scent of smoke suddenly strong in her nostrils. The man's eyes didn't waver. "You forgot her. You made yourself forget." Her voice broke into a desperate whisper. "No, I would remember." The man's eyes darkened. "Not if you didn't want to." He took another step forward, and for the first time she didn't move back. "You've been running from me because I remind you of the truth," he said. "That you left her there." The words hollowed her out. She shook her head violently, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I didn't. I couldn't." But the memories were coming now, uninvited and relentless. The smell of burning wood, her sister's screams, the door collapsing in flames. The man's voice softened, almost breaking. "She called for you until the end." Anna's sob ripped through the silence, the sound raw and unrestrained. There was no place to hide from the truth anymore. Anna's sobs faded into shuddering breaths. The man stepped back, his eyes fixed on her as though gauging whether she would break completely. "I followed you," he said quietly, "because I promised her I'd keep you safe." She stared at him, the words a jagged mix of comfort and accusation. "All this time, you were protecting me?" He nodded, though his expression was far from relieved. "But protection has its limits. She wanted you to remember." Anna's hands clenched into fists as anger surged through the grief. "Why now?" He glanced toward the dark hallway. "Because the fire wasn't an accident." The chill in the air deepened, and for the first time, Anna felt the weight of something even darker than her past pressing in from the shadows. Anna's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out everything but the man's words. "The fire wasn't an accident." Her voice cracked as she asked, "Then who?" He stepped closer, his expression shifting from sorrow to something darker. "Someone who's still out there." The building groaned under the weight of silence, dust falling from the ceiling like ash. Anna felt the ground tilt beneath her. "Why follow me?" she demanded. His eyes locked on hers. "Because you were next." A cold shiver tore through her spine. Every step she'd taken, every shadow she'd feared, it had been real. Somewhere in the distance a metallic clang echoed, pulling their attention to the far hallway. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "They found us." The metallic sound came again, closer now. The man grabbed Anna's arm, pulling her toward the side corridor. "We don't have time," he hissed. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear over it. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, their footsteps muffled by the dust-covered floor. She glanced over her shoulder, catching a flash of movement, a figure in the darkness, following. "Who is it?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. "The one who started the fire." The air seemed to grow heavier, pressing down on her chest. Shadows shifted, swallowing the light from behind them. The man's grip tightened, urgency bleeding into his voice. "Run." They burst into a larger room, the collapsed ceiling opening to the night sky. The cold air rushed in, thick with fog. Anna gasped for breath, her chest heaving. The man moved to the far side, scanning the exits. "We're trapped," she realized, her voice trembling. He shook his head. "Not yet." A shadow passed across the opening above, and both froze. A figure dropped down silently, landing between them and the only way out. The intruder's face was obscured by a mask, but their presence radiated menace. The man stepped in front of Anna, shielding her. "Go," he ordered. But her feet refused to move. The masked figure tilted their head, and in a voice like gravel said, "She remembers now." The man lunged at the masked figure, the clash echoing through the empty room. Anna stumbled back, her breath ragged, watching the violent struggle. Every movement was sharp and desperate, the man's fists meeting the intruder's strikes with equal force. "Run, Anna," he shouted between grunts, but her body refused to leave him. The masked figure swung hard, sending him crashing into a pile of debris. The sound made her flinch. The intruder's gaze locked on her, slow steps closing the distance. Anna's hands trembled as she reached for the rusted metal rod near her feet. The intruder spoke again, softer this time. "You left her, just like you'll leave him." Something in Anna snapped. With a cry that tore from her chest, she swung the rod with all her strength. The impact echoed like a gunshot, sending the masked figure staggering. "Not this time," she said, voice shaking but fierce. The man pulled himself to his feet, blood on his lip, eyes locked on her. The masked figure recovered quickly, retreating toward the shadows. "This isn't over," they hissed before vanishing into the darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Anna's ragged breathing. She dropped the rod, her hands shaking violently. The man stepped closer, his voice low. "Now you understand why I never left." The silence after the fight felt heavier than the struggle itself. Anna's hands were still trembling, the metal rod lying at her feet. The man leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "It's over for tonight," he said, though his tone carried no relief. Anna looked toward the shadowed doorway where the masked figure had vanished, her mind racing. "They'll come back," she whispered. He nodded grimly. "And next time, they won't run." The words hung in the air like a sentence neither of them wanted to serve. Anna took a deep breath, feeling the sting of her own courage. She had stood her ground, but the cost was only beginning to show. They left the building in silence, the fog swallowing them as soon as they stepped outside. The street was empty, but Anna's eyes darted to every shadow, expecting movement. The man walked slightly ahead, scanning the surroundings with the alertness of someone who had lived too long in danger. "Where do we go?" Anna asked quietly. "Somewhere they won't follow. Somewhere they can't." She wasn't sure if such a place existed. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of wet asphalt. The sound of their footsteps was too loud, echoing against the deserted street. Every step away from the building felt like pulling free from a trap, only to walk into another. They reached an alley where the dim glow of a single light bulb flickered above a rusted metal door. The man stopped, scanning the rooftops before unlocking it with an old key. Inside was a cramped, dusty room lined with maps, photographs, and newspaper clippings pinned to the walls. Anna's eyes were drawn to one picture, a young girl smiling, her hair braided neatly. "That's her," the man said softly. Anna stepped closer, her throat tightening. She remembered the girl's laugh now, the way she used to hold her hand. Her sister. The reality felt heavier in this small, suffocating room. Anna traced the edge of the photo with her fingertips. "I thought forgetting would make it easier." The man's voice was low, but steady. "Forgetting doesn't erase the truth. It just leaves you unprepared when it returns." She turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Then we prepare," she said. His jaw tightened, a flicker of approval crossing his face. "It won't be easy. They've been waiting for years." She nodded, her fear still present but tempered by something new. Resolve. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just running. The man spread a map on the table, marking several locations with a red pen. "This is where they move. This is where they hide." Anna studied the markings, committing them to memory. "And this," he said, pointing to a spot far from the city, "is where it ends." She met his gaze, the weight of the journey ahead settling in her chest. "Then we go there." For a brief moment, the room was silent, except for the hum of the light bulb. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, hiding the city beyond. Somewhere out there, the masked figure was still moving, still planning. But now, so were they. Dawn was still hours away, the city cloaked in silence. Anna stood by the window of the safe house, staring into the fog-drenched streets. The man moved quietly behind her, gathering their few supplies. "When we leave," he said, "we don't come back." She didn't turn, her reflection in the glass ghostlight. "I'm not running anymore," she murmured. The words tasted unfamiliar but certain. Somewhere out there the masked figure was waiting, but the fear that once owned her had shifted into something sharper. Purpose. She placed her hand on the cold glass, the mist outside mirroring the haze of her thoughts. The man laid a worn photograph on the table, a girl's smiling face, the same as before. "She'd want you to finish this," he said. Anna's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. "Then, I will." The weight of that promise settled between them, heavier than any weapon. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "We leave at first light." Outside, a faint creak sounded from somewhere in the street. Both froze, exchanging a glance. The quiet was too deliberate, too still. Someone was close. A shadow shifted just beyond the window's edge. The man moved silently toward the door, signaling Anna to stay back. She ignored him, stepping into the pale light spilling from the cracked doorway. The street outside was empty, until a slow, deliberate tapping echoed from the far end. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Her chest tightened. The sound was the same rhythm she'd heard in the building before the fire all those years ago. The man's voice cut through the air. "They've found us." The figure stepped into the light, revealing the masked face once more. This time the mask bore a fresh crack, exposing a sliver of skin and a cold, twisted smile beneath. Anna's breath caught, but she didn't step back. The man's hand closed over her shoulder, steadying her. The masked figure tilted their head and raised a single finger to where their lips would be. Silence. Then, without a word, they melted back into the fog. The street was empty again, but the air was charged, as if a promise had just been made. Anna stood in the doorway long after the fog swallowed the figure. Her heartbeat slowed, but her resolve sharpened. She turned to the man, her voice low and certain. "No more running." He gave a slow nod, the faintest trace of a grim smile tugging at his lips. From somewhere deep in the fog, a single echoing breath reached them. Whether memory or threat, neither could tell. The sound lingered in the silence, stretching into the space between them. It was a beginning as much as it was an end.